Yes, high quality. Oh, I hope I did that right. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, nope, not live yet. Damn it. Why doesn't it just keep the thing? Okay, local recordings. Yes. Good. Now go live. Hey, everybody. I can do it
Yes.
right. So let's do this.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
Oh, what's it say when your day starts when you're cussing under your breath?
Yeah.
Welcome in. Week 3 preview. And what's it say when you're a Giants fan? Like, how do you feel? How are you supposed to feel if you're a Giants fan Thursday night against the 49ers? Like, okay, it's been an odd year for the Giants. And now without Saquon Barkley recording Wednesday morning, the last we heard is that he could play, but I think that was gamesmanship. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a Giants defense. Like you said, Cease, the hard thing to understand about this Giants team is for the first 6 quarters of the season, they were outscored 60-0. And then in the next 2 quarters, they outscored the opponent 31-8. Which team is the real team? And that's the kind of questions we try to get more information for. We don't answer them because that implies some sort of finality, right? This is always in motion. It's always being written. This is a tough San Francisco defense, and it is a short week. So you certainly would not expect. There's been a lot better defensive football than offensive football so far this year, I would say. And you would not expect a high-flying day for the Giants defense. That being said, Daniel Jones showed us his weekly ceiling. And that's hard to leave on the bench unless you have somebody that's demonstrated an equal ceiling and maybe a higher floor and in a better matchup. So if you have Daniel Jones and you're saying, am I really playing Daniel Jones? You might really be playing Daniel Jones. You probably aren't playing Matt Breida against his old team. Like you said, Cease, I don't think we're going to see Barkley. That's gamemanship. Breida hasn't exactly been impressive. The little bit he has got to fill in for Barkley. And I'm interested to see Eric Gray, their draft pick out of Oklahoma, a good all-around back, and Gary Brightwell, who's a decent utility back. Darren Waller looks okay. There's some good news for the Giants defense. Hamstring issues don't seem to be limiting him. So he's one of the few tight end picks that we're feeling good about. And the wide receiver picture is an absolute mess, except maybe Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt making the kind of plays he was making back at Tennessee. And Daniel Jones with that deep ball and giving Hyatt that chance to high point the ball and make a play on a 50-50 ball. And Hyatt is doing that. We'll see if that trend continues and see if he can get more snaps and be a bigger part of the game plan if they can keep the San Francisco defense at bay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm kind of waiting for Hyatt to continue to do more. I'm waiting for Wan'Dale Robinson to even just get out there.
Right.
And then we'll watch the youngsters in the backfield. And the Barkley thing's weird because it's like, it's totally not serious, but he's going to miss 3 weeks. What? It's totally not a high ankle sprain, but he's going to miss a half month. What? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
49ers side. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just to interject, I mean, again, I think Cease, as a fantasy player, you probably want Barkley to sit at least this week, maybe 2 weeks. It's not exciting for your fantasy team if they put him back out there. That usually ends up worse. Look at Joe Burrow. That ends up worse for us than when teams err on the side of caution and it's a long season. And Barkley is obviously very important to this offense. So the rational idea here is even if Barkley is saying, I can play, let me play, I can play, let me play, let him sit.
Yeah, anytime guys say that, you're just like, okay, no. We're going to save you from yourself. Save me from falling all over the San Francisco 49ers. And again, you know everybody that you would regularly start, except where do you put George Kittle? Because that doesn't seem to be going as swimmingly as fantasy GMs wanted. So again, you don't listen to the Audible to be like, Chris McCaffrey is really good. Like, yes, the 49ers, they're at home. They should roll. And that should mean big things for your fantasy team.
Yeah, the Giants defense, I'll tell you this much. We do know about the Giants defense is it's not good. We're going to continue to watch Arizona and Joshua Dobbs, but it may be a high watermark for that offense. That half, really, not that game against the Giants last week. What does clarify things a little bit for us is the Brandon Ayuk has a shoulder injury. They did some imaging. He doesn't have a broken clavicle, but that they feared that or had to check that shows you the severity of the injury. Again, with wide receivers and shoulder injuries, probably an AC sprain then. And it isn't quite like with running backs where you have to lead with your shoulder. You take a lot of punishment, but you come down on that shoulder. You need that shoulder to be healthy to fully extend, So you would think that, again, with Ayuk, you just err on the side of letting him sit. And even if he does play, he's certainly an upside wide receiver 3 flex play if he's out there. But also, this could go south pretty quickly if he lands on that shoulder, or otherwise he's limited. So you're much more excited to play Deebo Samuel. This is a George Kittle game. This is a game where you would expect Kittle to come through for you. You knew you were getting a boom bust tight end when you took him pretty early at the position, but you also had a tight end who can win your week for you. And this might be one of those weeks. Also going to watch Christian McCaffrey. Now, on one hand, Christian McCaffrey dominating this backfield. If we had known this, I think Adam Leviton or someone was saying this, if we had known this was going to be the usage, he's the number 1 pick in fantasy drafts, right? But at the same time, if you're giving him this kind of workload, aren't you just asking him to get hurt? Aren't you just asking him to get worn down, especially if we're turning around on a Thursday night game? So wouldn't you expect Elijah Mitchell maybe to have a little bit of the last year workload, 10, 12 carries? Not to say that McCaffrey's not a good play in this one because he's breaking a long run of game in addition to getting this workload. This could be a little more Elijah Mitchell. And as far as Brock Purdy goes, he had a rushing touchdown last week and they won, and he still wasn't a good fantasy play. So you're not exactly rushing to get him in your lineup, although if it works out, we'll say, wow, it's the Giants defense. We should have known.
You trusting Kittle one more time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just think with Ayuk banged up, I think that this is absolutely, and we saw Zach Ertz catch a ton of balls last week against the Giants. We saw, I think that there was a touchdown by a tight end in week 1 against them. So yeah, I think that you are looking at this as a good matchup for George Kittle.
You have to write down the name of the Cowboys tight end.
Right,
Anytime we're going to talk about, wasn't it some Cowboys?
Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Exactly. Whatever name conglomeration that you wrote down, that's what we are continuing to look at. And for Christian, it's always been a smaller window. And with this workload, he's getting the Deebo workload from a year or so back, a couple years ago, where it's like, just do everything. Oh, wait, you're hurt. Damn. Okay, find someone else to do everything. Tennessee and Cleveland is not exciting to me. Like, not at all. But Tennessee is interesting because of the guys that I love on that team, like Chiggy Okonkwo, like Tajay Spears. Is the cap 4 for each one of those, like 4 touches and 4 receptions for Chiggy, and then here's a few carries for Spears, and Derrick Henry's going to do his thing. 25 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. That sounds about right. Well, I don't know if you'd be relying on Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He's not a what the heck flex for me.
Right.
Cleveland, the good thing we can say about Cleveland is they have a hell of a defense. So how's Tennessee going to get that done when they're still trotting out the Ryan Tannehill retread?
Right. Tannehill at least turned things around last week, played well, led the team to a win. And this feels like it's going to be a street fight kind of game. See, this feels like it should be played in a downpour where like the turf starts to come up and everyone's uniforms get muddy, a muddy game. Not exactly a big high-flying game for fantasy football, certainly an entertaining game depending on what kind of football that you like. And Tennessee, Cleveland D's tough, but Tannehill's finding himself, and you should have a healthier DeAndre Hopkins who creeps back into wide receiver 3 flex territory in PPR leagues. But like you laid it out, Cease, between Hopkins and Burks, who made that big play in the deep passing game, and Chiggy Okonkwo, and hopefully they continue to call Tajay Spears' number, even as a receiver, maybe especially as a receiver. And this is going to be a low volume passing game because there's going to be a lot of Derrick Henry. And that includes even when it's not working. As long as the game is close, you're going to try to get Derrick Henry up over 20 carries because that's whenever the defense can crack in the fourth quarter. So I think you're going to see this as a passing game that maybe gives us a reliable wide receiver 3 flex play in Hopkins. But we saw last week, even with Hopkins limited, even with Tannehill playing very well, this is a tough pass offense to find value in, but we are liking Derrick Henry as this is a winning team. If things would have went their way against the Saints, this team would be looking to go 3-0. This Titans team that we looked at and saw their flaws, but Mike Vrabel says, no, they're always going to overachieve. They're always going to be competitive. And we turn that to the other side on the Browns, Cease. The Browns should be 2-0 right now with 2 divisional wins, right? They should be feeling like, hey, we're a contender for this division to really start to hit the peak of this team. Now you wonder what they have. And when you're trying to find yourself, the Titans are not a team you want to be playing.
No, not at all. Mike Vrabel team ready to take you out. Like that's what they do. Even
Yeah.
if it's boring. So the
Yeah.
Cleveland side, we're going to be getting data points. They haven't signed anybody yet, right?
Right.
This is the
They had-
problem with Wednesday
they had-
morning as I just
before-
wake up.
Oh, no, they had Kareem Hunt. Let's be clear about this. They had him in for a tryout. It was reported as a visit, but it was actually officially a tryout. And as was pointed out, I think by Pro Football Talk, a tryout means let's see what you have. A visit means we know what you have. Let's see if we can work out a deal. So, yeah, I think it's going to be Jerome Ford's week this week.
Yeah, so Ford and then see what Strong can do.
Oh,
and
wait.
then
Now Will is
see-
saying Hunt signed. Hold on.
Hunt
See,
did
there's
sign?
the chat room for it.
Okay, the chat
there's
room coming
room
through.
for us.
All right. It's a live show, ladies and gentlemen. Just double check on that, Bloom. But
It's
okay.
life in real time. Yeah.
Can that happen? Can he come in and pick up everything quickly? Yes, he should be able
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
like all those sorts of things. Now, how do you feel about your waiver wire selection if that's
Right.
the case? So, yeah, here we go. Cleveland now with more Kareem Hunt, I guess.
Yeah. So this is good timing. And thanks, chat room, for getting our back on this one. A 1-year deal worth up to, there's that agent language for you. Agents love that. It's every time I hear the up to when there's a signing, I think, oh, an agent just got his wings or something like that. Up to $4 million. So it's not a veteran minimum deal, or at the very least, it's a deal that contemplates if you can produce and help our team stay competitive, then you're going to get rewarded for that. I see. So let's just talk this out in real time right now. I mean, I guess is it clear that if you could have one of the 2 backs going forward, Ford or Hunt, which one would you want? And then about how big is the gap?
Well, I need to know what those incentives are because here's what teams do is they don't play guys to get their incentives. So, like we can say up to 4 million and we can be excited and it's Kareem Hunt and he's back with the Browns. All this stuff is true. But if those incentives are playing time based, you know what he's not going to get? Playing time.
Right.
Because teams don't want to pay. Now that's, maybe a little bit further out there, but for me it's Hunt. It's Hunt. I've seen him do it more.
Yeah.
Take probably about a month to get him active. So if we talk windows, let's talk this out in real time. The window for Ford was last week, and you didn't have him because you didn't know Chubb was going to get hurt. The window for Ford is now rapidly closing, and give it about a month. I would say 3 weeks, and then Hunt will be the guy that I want. Right now, if I got Ford, I'm disappointed, but I'm throwing him in as like a flex play, something, and just not expecting as much as I was. Because Hunt can do everything right away. It's just, is he in shape? Is he in football shape? All these sorts of things.
Yeah, like the Dalvin Cook situation where he wasn't even really ready to practice right away. So maybe there could be a window for Ford this week. And of course, this is a performance-based game. So the Hunt we saw last year, see, that's the thing why I'm so confused by how to really pin this down, Cease. If we knew we were getting 2020 Kareem Hunt, 2021 Kareem Hunt, I'd say, oh, it's Hunt. It's Hunt by a good margin, even not knowing what Ford's going to do. 2022 Kareem Hunt, looked like a back on decline. And the way the league treated him, they treated him like a back in decline, or at the very least, he saw himself worth more than the teams he visited saw him worth. So it's hard to figure this out. I think it's going to be annoying. I think it's going to be fluid. I think that, like you said, Cease, there can be factors that aren't necessarily performance-based, that are money-based coming in here. And at least for this week, though, with Hunt just getting ramped up, if you are going to play a Browns back, you would play Ford, but it is the Tennessee defense. We saw what Joshua Kelly did, very little last week in a spot start opportunity against this defense. Deshaun Watson, I think, I don't want to be too definitive, and we've been leading up to this story for a while. He's just not the old Deshaun Watson. I don't think we're ever going to see the old Deshaun Watson again. I mean, someone brought up Tiger Woods, but did Tiger ever get back to old Tiger after all that stuff? Some of it's the back injury and stuff like that. Who knows? We're speculating, right? We're peeking through keyholes here. but he just doesn't have that eye of the tiger out on the field. You just see it. He's not a sharp quarterback. And Tennessee's defense, even though they're vulnerable in the secondary, and you play Amari Cooper, watch the practice reports. He did play, he did produce, but you're not as excited for Elijah Moore. You're not as excited for David Njoku. Maybe if there's a rational game plan here and you attack Tennessee through the air more than on the ground, Moore could hit, Njoku could hit, but this is a disappointing passing game. It isn't quite as bad as last year, but it's not a good passing game. It's not a passing game that appears that it can feed more than one mouth in a week. Maybe this week changes that because of the weakness of the Tennessee pass defense. But it continues to be confusing. But I think that we can count on probably the Browns underachieving on offense unless Deshaun Watson really figures out what's going on with his loss of his edge.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Atlanta Falcons is the next team against your Detroit Lions, Bloom. I'm putting them on you.
Yeah.
Putting them
I'll
on
take
you.
that. I want that. Yeah.
But against Atlanta, like, all right. Okay. Let's see what you can do as Desmond Ridder continues to do more. Speaking of doing more, Kyle Pitts to the white courtesy phone, please. Like, can you do something? It's interesting when Jonnu Smith has double his catches and like 3 times his yards against the Packers last week. Okay, Mac Hollins, maybe what the fuck? I don't know. Drake London, of course, you're starting him. Tyler Algier, you want a little bit more. I think you might have got greedy after week 1, but like, okay, we could be settling into the Robinson Algier backfield in this workload. Of course, it all comes back to Ridder. Do the Packers have enough defensively to put the pressure on Ridder? Because that's where his game starts to fall apart. No offense, most quarterbacks are like that, but Ridder stirs the drink. Robinson and Algier do the heavy lifting and dash of London. It sounds like a nice combination.
It does, Cecil. I'll tell you, we can look at the NFC, and I don't want to bloom anybody, but Dallas, San Francisco, and Philly. Okay, those teams are very much in the mix, right? Very, very much in the mix. It wouldn't be a surprise to see any of them in the Super Bowl. All right. The other 4 playoff teams, I don't know. I don't know who's going to win the South. I don't know who's going to win the North. I don't know who could sneak up and get a wild card spot. And these games are going to sort that out. We may not see the significance of it until December, but this is definitely an interesting game and one we could look back on and say this team made the playoffs because they won this game. Atlanta, you would expect this game to be a springboard if they can win this one to go to 3-0, and Desmond Ridder with that comeback, he's looking like potentially even a spot start. If someone tells me, assuming Joe Burrow is going to play, Joe Burrow or Ridder, I might go with Ridder. I might go with Ridder over Deshaun Watson this week. You have to imagine they're going to have to open up the offense, and Detroit's pass defense, which wasn't great to begin with, continues to lose good players. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson now banged up and on injured reserve. So you would expect it to be a good game for Drake London. And yes, one Kyle Pitts. And boy, if it doesn't happen this week for Kyle Pitts, I understand why you might want to just say, I'm dropping Pitts. I'm never drafting him again. I'm never getting him on my fantasy team because this has to be it. They gave up 9 for 132 to the Seattle tight ends last week. Detroit did. So you have to think Arthur Smith is a rational game planner, and you're going to highlight Pitts. Maybe it's going to be Jonnu Smith. I think that Tyler Algier is a what the heck flex this week. We saw Kenneth Walker bottled up last week. We also saw him score 2 touchdowns. And we know that this backfield has shifted to Bijan Robinson. However, Algier still got 16 carries last week in a game that the Falcons didn't quite control. Detroit's run defense has been pretty tough, but again, giving up those touchdowns, giving up points. So Algier still remains a what the heck flex. And then we have the Detroit Lions. And it's the NFL is just so fascinating, Cease, with the narratives, the overarching narratives of franchises, right? Like the Chargers lose in a way that the Chargers lose, right? The Lions lose in a way that the Lions lose. And you hope maybe they can turn one of those into a win this week.
Yeah, and we'll continue to watch the Lions with great interest. I love what Lester says in the chat room. There's going to be so many windows this year. You better be active. You better be active with your team. Let's talk about the Lions, though, with less David Montgomery. And then what does that mean? I know, didn't we get some hot Zonovan Night talk in on the waiver wire show? All right, let's watch out for what the lines look like without David Montgomery. How does that split end up? Of course, it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, and then Craig Reynolds is there. Those are the interesting backs. Gibbs, incredibly interesting, incredibly explosive, and just need to do a little more.
Yeah.
Sam Laporta can do a lot more. So
Yes.
go to the
Yes.
kids, man. Dan Campbell, go to the kids. They can make plays.
Yeah. Right. A memo to Sean Payton. Right. We'll get to
Mm.
that. Jared Goff, even with the pick 6 last week, was a solid fantasy start, and you like him in this matchup. You just think Detroit, especially with their pass defense ailing, they're going to have to score a lot of points, and that's where Jahmyr Gibbs comes in, especially as a receiver. With David Montgomery likely out this week, maybe another week more. Thigh bruise, at least it's not a joint injury. One that I think that once he's back, he'll be fine. It's one we're not worried about recurrence of injury. But for this week, it's Gibbs, and I guess Craig Reynolds is a deep what the heck flex. However, Zonovan Knight looms, and I'm not sure that Knight is inferior to Reynolds, even though Reynolds, and remember they dropped Reynolds and brought him back in that week leading up to the final 53. So Knight, he might end up being the guy after this game is over that we say if Montgomery misses another game, Knight has more value than Reynolds, but they might also split this role so that neither of them have startable value. Not the only Reynolds wrap. The Reynolds wrap also includes Josh Reynolds on this team. And Josh Reynolds, we're not talking about him enough. He's the downfield receiver. Remember, he's been playing with Jared Goff going back to the Rams days. There's a ton of chemistry there. And last week, he was a week winner for you. If you trusted him, he was cheap on the waiver wire last week. Maybe if he's still out there, he wasn't as cheap. He might see a lot of A.J. Terrell in this game. However, you have to consider him as a wide receiver 3 flex just because, again, this could be a high-scoring game and that chemistry and that success. Of course, there's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hopefully, it really was just cramps last week. And then Sam Laporta. And I think this is a game. Cecil, you brought up Laporta. I think this is potentially a Laporta game, especially if Reynolds is neutralized mostly by A.J. Terrell. So I'm looking for that. And I would say right now, Cecil, of the 3 rookie tight ends, because we talked about them a lot in the preseason, Laporta's the one set up best for fantasy success.
Bloom, I'm so upset though, because I don't think we're gonna get what we're wanting to get. Like, could be high scoring game, yes, but imagine if the Lions were using Gibbs right.
Right.
Y'all wanted him. Y'all went
Yeah.
crazy for him. Y'all moved up to get him. Like you guys wanted Gibbs. So much so that it was pretty easy to find out that Gibbs was gonna be a Lion if you knew who to talk to. So you get him and then you don't use him? What? Like what? Bijan, we saw it last week, and Tyler Algier is still going to be there, right? But imagine what we could be talking about. We could talk about Bijan versus Gibbs, these running, these next McCaffrey like running backs, LaDainian Tomlinson like we could be talking about a running back matchup of 2 rookies. Like this is very rare, but very exciting. If Detroit would do what they said they were going to do, it's confusing.
Yeah, well, I think that a guy like Gibbs, I mean, we saw how McCaffrey was used in his rookie year. We saw the ramp up in usage to Austin Eckler. How long did it take to Austin Eckler to finally get goal line carries? So I think, sorry, we're going to have a maybe more abbreviated timeline than what it took for. And remember, Eckler and McCaffrey were probably the 2, for fantasy football especially, the 2 most frequent comps for what you hope Gibbs' career arc goes. So it's a slow start, but might be accelerated a little bit because of this injury.
All right. New Orleans Saints time facing against the Green Bay Packers, Bloom. So let's get into this one as New Orleans got the momentum. Derek Carr's got people excited. Rashid Shaheed is my favorite player in the league.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. And now with less Jamal Williams with a hamstring. That makes me sad because I love
that
Jamal.
does. Yeah, he's a great dude. He's one
and
of our
we're not yet
dudes.
to Kamara. Kamara's next week.
Next week, that's right. So get your buy low offers in if the team is 2-0, most definitely. So this game, I think, where is Detroit, and this is another sort out the NFC kind of game. One of the teams that is a contender to make the playoffs, not in the Dallas, San Francisco, Philadelphia class, maybe trying to convince themselves and us that they are. New Orleans and Green Bay, whereas I think the Atlanta offense showed another facet last week, and we know that the Detroit offense is always opened up. Both of these teams, I think, would be happy for a 13-10 kind of game in this one. So might be a fantasy underachiever game, but much like that Cleveland, Tennessee game, still a very entertaining game. Derek Carr is not a viable fantasy quarterback right now, but in a magic trick, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, 3 of his wide receivers are viable. Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and of course, Chris Olave. So I think that with Green Bay, you saw Atlanta, you saw Drake London get off the schneid. And even though Kyle Pitts didn't come through for us last week at tight end, I'm not saying to play a tight end, but you can just see that there is some vulnerability there that can be exploited in the Green Bay pass defense. The backfield is just a mess, right? Is Kendre Miller even going to play? If he plays, he could break out, but if he plays, he could also be part of a 3-headed backfield with Tony Jones and Taysom Hill. There's your favorite play. And I got to say it again, Cease. If you didn't know anything about Taysom Hill and you just started watching football last week and you watched him line up as a tailback and take carries as a tailback, which he actually did last week, he looked good. He looked like he should be a tailback in addition to all the other roles he plays. So for a tight end, what the heck tight end play? I like Taysom Hill this week. And I think that Taysom Hill may be getting his foot in the door to add this to the Swiss Army knife. It's just a little bit different from being a Wildcat quarterback, but different enough that it adds value if he can retain this role.
Yeah, let's talk about the role of the Packers wide receivers, because Romeo Dobbs, love Romeo, 2 for 30 last week. Oh,
Right.
okay. What? Here comes Jaden Reed, hot on the waiver wire. Does that keep up? Where's Christian Watson at? Like, what's going on, Green Bay? Why isn't AJ Dillon good? Lots of questions around the Packers. This one's at home, but the tundra ain't frozen yet, baby, and the Saints are feeling it.
Yes. I want to piggyback off a great point that Dave Gladstone is making in the chat room, that Taysom should be on the field more often, even as a decoy, because from a football strategy standpoint, I want to drill down a little bit. Any Taysom Hill talk is welcome on this show, right? Because you have to practice the Taysom Hill plays, right? Like going into a week when you play the Saints, you have to spend prep time on, okay, when 7's out on the field, if he lines up here, we have to be ready for this. If he lines up here, right? I mean, you're putting it in the defense's mind. They have to spend time on this. There's no other team that gives you this kind of quandary that you have to, okay, well, if 7's on the field, if he's in the huddle, you all got to be ready. So that means that when he's on the field, that's who they're going to be thinking about. And absolutely, Dave Gladstone's right. He should be on the field more, if not as a decoy. And that should show you the kind of power he has over defenses as someone that can influence defenses, even maybe especially when he's not getting the ball. Jordan Love is influencing defenses with 6 passing touchdowns to take him seriously. Fantasy football players take him seriously. He's one of the highest scoring fantasy quarterbacks, even on a low volume. Now, still, this is the Saints defense. This is a good defense. You're not going to try to shoehorn Love into your lineup. We're going to watch and see if Christian Watson's back. We're going to watch and see if Aaron Jones is back. And if Christian Watson is back, Cease, like you said, well, we spun the wheel of the Packers passing game. There is 6 passing touchdowns to a lot. We had 1 good play in week 1. He came and hurt Romeo Dobbs. We had 1 good play in week 2. Jaden Reed, he barely touched the ball in week 1. So if Christian Watson's back, that number may go to 0 against a good defense. We'll see if Luke Musgrave can get things going. We know AJ Dillon's not going to get things going, even if Aaron Jones is out. He's just a what the heck flex at best. But if Aaron Jones is back, UTEP 2-step, baby. He's going to be in our lineups because he's really good. Again, it's not necessarily a big-time fantasy game, but an entertaining game and maybe an important game for these teams with playoff aspirations.
You've got aspirations. We've got perspirations. I don't know. We've got predictions and insight and news and podcasts and projections and everything else at footballguys.com. You love the show. You want to support the show. You go to footballguys.com. Of course, do the YouTube, like, comment, share, subscribe, all those sorts of things. But to support the show, we don't do any silly super chats. Please say what I had sent and I'll give you money. Like, no, it's up on the screen, baby. Like, well, we got it. We got you. We got you right here. We just ask that you check out footballguys.com. Sign up for that free daily newsletter. Takes written by me, Sigmund, and Joe Bryant. The hell of a trio, a hellish trio. Hellfire Club, right? Is that us? I don't know. We're cool. We rock out. Joe likes Metallica. That might surprise some people, right?
Yeah.
That Joe
The
Bryant,
early Metallica, the Cliff Metallica.
I think he celebrates their entire catalog.
Okay.
And he likes Saint Anger, which him and I are like the only 2 people on the planet that will actually listen to that album. Anyway, footballguys.com. Enough snare drum talk. Let's talk about footballguys.com. I want you to go there and support the show. Subscribe to footballguys.com. Got a great annual price. Please do that. We appreciate you all for that. Now, Denver and Miami is up next, Bloom, and oh boy, it's problems unless Sean Payton trusts the kids. You got a deep enough league. You can stash Mims. You can stash Jaleel McLaughlin. Okay. And I think I said at week 1, I was like, he probably won't trust him until week 7. And then he trusted him last week, but then he didn't because Marvin Mims had 2 catches for 100+ yards and a touchdown, and then he didn't get anything in the second half. What? Like, Sean Payton, did you forget? Like, hey, that kid over there, 19. He's pretty good. We need to see more Brandon Johnson, but Cortland Sutton looks good until they go to play the games. Like, I can't explain that. They need to replace Greg Dulcich in the offense. Bloom, I have an idea who it could be. I think in the red zone, you could see more Lil Jordan Humphrey. But this is a deep pull, baby. I'm not saying start him or whatever, but like if you just look at the bodies that you have and you say, okay, you don't have a Greg Dulcich, Troutman can't do it. Who's the most like a Dulcich? It's actually Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's not Lil. So Lil Jordan, larger role. Yeah, maybe. Just put a pin in it, baby. We got Javonte Samaje, that thing. Russ, what does he do? Russ, because it's been Jekyll and Hyde with the Broncos this year. Now it's against Miami. The Broncos are usually terrible in South Beach. It's an early game. It's the humidity. It's the heat. And it's this Jekyll and Hyde offense. But they're going to have to put their foot on the gas because Miami's going to be able to do whatever they want.
You would think so. This Denver defense, it feels like it's crumbling, right? It feels like it's very vulnerable after the state that they were left in by the Washington Commanders and Sam Howell. And I don't know if this offense is any good. I don't know. Based on what they did against the Raiders in week 1, I'd say no. Based on what they did in the first half last week, I'd say yes. The second half, no. Are we going to see more Marvin Mims? I don't think there's any reliable wide receiver here. And if they do the right thing and they do play more Marvin Mims, well, what do you have in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy? Not much. What do you have in this backfield? Play the kids, Jaleel McLaughlin, a 3-headed running back on a bottom half of the league offense is not a recipe for fantasy success. All right. Russell Wilson. Yeah, he had a big game last week. Like you said, Cecil, he shouldn't be running as much as he was. And you also had the benefit of a Hail Mary that was converted. Still a decent game. Again, with Marvin Mims, I mean, he can help make your week, even if it's through Russell Wilson being in your lineup on just a few targets. But this Payton regime, Cecil, we've been talking about this a lot. And this is a game, like you said, you expect the Broncos to go 0-3 out of this game, right?
Mm-hmm.
They start 0-3, then you start thinking ahead. We're human beings. Of course, we're thinking ahead. And you really start to picture, is this going to be Sean Payton? And like you said, maybe in some desperation, a rookie quarterback, a young quarterback that they give everything for and nothing else. Is this Denver Broncos regime with Sean Payton headed for a winter, a long, dark, cold winter, even though it starts in sunny South Beach?
Winter will show up one day and ask what you've been doing all summer.
Yeah.
Do you know what Mike McDaniel's been doing all summer?
Mhm.
Working, studying. And yeah, it's flipping awesome. I love him. We're watching Jalen Waddle with the concussion protocol. We'll see what goes on there. We're watching, and again, it's just start your Dolphins. Start anybody. Start the tight end. Start them all. And Tyreek Hill could just go off. He's against Pat Surtain. Yeah, so like it's Tyreek Hill. As long as Tua is upright and this Broncos defense are going to have to blitz less. So you're going to have lots of underneath stuff. Okay, Dolphins, fire up that the band a lot on Sunday.
Yeah, this is on the other hand, boy, you gotta love where the Dolphins are right now. And they are in that everlasting summer. Someone's asking about Steely Dan in the chat room. Your everlasting summer, you can see it fading fast. There's winter coming, but not in Miami. Winter never comes in Miami, right? Again, this Denver defense seems very vulnerable. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be able to do what he wants. This offense will go through Tyreek Hill, maybe Jalen Waddle. We're going to watch the concussion protocol. you notice, by the way, the change in messaging this year, Cease? Instead of saying that someone suffered a concussion or head injury, they say they're in concussion protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, that means they got a concussion.
Oh,
right?
don't get me started on the changes in language. That's a different show. Like that's
a
another
different show.
podcast. Yeah,
That's add it to the list. Changes in language.
Changes in language are very sneaky and
Yeah.
almost very sinister. And it's the NFL. Of course, it's sinister.
Right. Well, you're going to see a lot of Raheem Mostert, Salvin Ahmed, who's been playing pretty well, and I still think that long term he's worth a stash, as I would guess, even when Jeff Wilson is back, someone that figures in if Raheem Mostert goes down. But if there's no Jalen Waddle, if Mostert goes down in this game, you're looking at Chris Brooks and Devin Achane. But boy, they seem reluctant to use Achane, even though they were eager to spend a second day pick on him. And then we get to what if Waddle doesn't play? And if you've been watching the YouTube stream live, you already know what to say. Braxton Berrios flex, as Cecil was highlighting. Let's watch Braxton Berrios as a deep what the heck flex in this game, especially if Waddle is out. Eric Ezukanma is really interesting too. This is a guy that they feel like is dynamic enough to use in a Deebo Samuel light role. Now, Berrios can do a lot. As an outside receiver, I'm not as sure. Ezukanma has the height, has the size to be an outside receiver, in addition to having the juice for them to use him as a Deebo Samuel kind of player. So I continue to be very fascinated with him. He's another player I'll be watching here if Waddle can't play. And this Miami team, this is one Cease. We're far enough into the season now when there is a trap game. This is potentially a trap game for Miami, and this is a gut check game for Denver to see if they're really going to play for their coach.
What is it when it's Chargers and Vikings? What is
Disappointment bowl.
Yeah, when it's two teams that historically choke at various times and can get your heart going because they both have talent and skill, and they're both not as good as you thought they would be. Chargers and Vikings is up next, and Chargers side, well, it's pretty simple, except what's the status of Eckler this week? It's Wednesday morning when we're recording. Okay, so he was supposed to just miss a week. Bloom, correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
And then Kelly comes in and doesn't do much. And now does that provide desperation to get back to Eckler, even if he's maybe not quite or whatever? Like, had Kelly had more success, you'd think, oh, they just keep it rolling, and Eckler, when he's good, they'll bring him out. Because Kelly wasn't, does that create a desperation incentive to get him out there? And Austin's already he's a freak. Like, he's going to push as much to get out there. So we'll watch the injury reports again. It's Wednesday morning. We're recording this, but that's the one complication with the Chargers here.
Yeah, I think this is kind of an elimination game, right? Both of these teams are 0-2. Both of these teams can look at the games that they lost and think, oh, we had chances. Well, maybe not Minnesota against Philly, but certainly against Tampa Bay. So this is definitely a game where it's kind of an elimination game. It's only week 3, but you fall to 0-3, and that's not a place that you want to be for the Chargers. Kellen Moore hasn't exactly changed everything and cleaned everything up, but Herbert should be a solid play against the Vikings defense. Brian Flores' defense also has not cleaned things up. This is the battle of the disappointing coordinators, right? What you did see last week, the Minnesota defense was pushed around. See, so I don't remember the number with DeAndre Swift. I think it was over 100 of his 170-something yards were before contact, right? Yards before contact is generally an offensive line stat, but it's also a stat that shows you the vulnerability of the front. And I think that the Chargers and Kellen Moore should be eager to run. And even if Eckler is playing this week, Kelly could be what the heck flex. We saw him do it in week 1 with a run-heavy game plan against Miami, a game they should have won, a game Herbert had chances to win, just like in week 2 against Tennessee. But you saw without Eckler, the passing game went through Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So again, Eckler, is he out there? That's kind of a key to projecting this offense. You're keeping Allen in any event. He's the clear number 1. Maybe Williams, you lose a little bit of the edge of his upside. You see Gerald Everett. See, did you see last week there were like 2 different plays where Gerald Everett took like 4 guys to tackle him? Gerald Everett is turning an Ironhead Hayward? Huh? It's still not making fantasy value with Donald Parham out there, but just something to watch, something to note. They'd have the weapons. The team shouldn't be 0-2, right? And should the Vikings be 0-2? I know this. If Kirk Cousins is your fantasy quarterback, you're probably not 0-2 in your fantasy league.
Phillips, one of our favorites. especially his avatar with Key and Peele. Thinking Kelly just ran up against that incredible Tennessee run defense. Should bounce back, assuming Eck is out. We'll continue to watch that, and we'll continue to see the Vikings not perform the way they should. Like, okay, let's see what's going on in that backfield. That's
Yeah.
my question there. Like, will that shake out? Will that ever be fixed? Will they get that right? Hell, I don't know. But they're at home, and this one should be a high-scoring game. The chat room seems excited about it. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it'll end in a tie. It's 35-35 tie,
Right.
everybody.
Right. On
But
a missed
for
field goal.
fantasy purposes, right? For fantasy purposes, that's great, baby.
Yeah, I do think that this is a game that could produce a lot of fantasy overachievers. And for fantasy, what's very sad for the Vikings is good for Kirk Cousins, good for his targets, good for fantasy teams. They have no running game to speak of. And Alexander Madison looks like a plotter. That may open the door for Ty Chandler, but he hasn't looked much better. And maybe it's an offensive line issue. And they certainly have had this offensive line was young and had a lot of continuity coming into the year. Now it's banged up and it's not establishing the run. It is establishing the pass. How good is Kirk Cousins? Not just his raw numbers, but he's supporting 4 fantasy plays. Last week, there were 4 viable fantasy plays in this passing game. And that's with TJ Hawkinson being the number 1 tight end on the week. And Justin Jefferson, I don't know if he was the number 1 wide receiver last week, but he had to be close. Justin Jefferson's getting his massive helping of targets, catches, and yards. And yet Jordan Addison has long touchdowns in each of the first 2 weeks. And KJ Osborne getting a lot of targets in the red zone, converted one to a touchdown in week 2. So if you played him as a what the heck flex, you'll take it. That's fine. You get 3 catches, 30 some yards, and a touchdown from what the heck flex. You will take it. Osborne is getting more snaps than Addison. Could that flip? This is one of those situations like James Cook, where that means there's room for Addison's role to grow, room for his value to grow. You would expect Hawkinson, Jefferson, and at least one of these receivers, but maybe both, again, to be viable this week. Ryan Tannehill was very efficient against this Chargers defense, and we saw, again, what Miami did to the Chargers defense in week 1. And yeah, Cease, I want to say someone has to win, but it's the Chargers and the Vikings. They may find a way for nobody to win.
Yeah, maybe that doesn't happen. The next game up is very interesting, but maybe for different reasons than you think. Patriots and Jets.
Oh, boy.
AFC East. Oh, boy is correct because the Patriots offense is weird, man. Like, after week 1, you're like, oh, I guess Mac Jones, you are going to, offensive
Bill
coordinator does
O'Brien
help. Yeah,
is
okay.
back.
Bill O'Brien, everybody. And then he goes 231-2. Huh? Okay. And then you're thinking, and I was going, okay, Demario Douglas, all my super crazy deep dynasty shares in the 7-Eleven. That's my nickname for him because he's always open. I love that guy. What is it? Butte, Keyshawn Butte is there. Like, maybe he's going to do a little more. And then Kendrick Bourne, and everyone's like going crazy, and then nothing, and Juju's whatever, and Devontae is just kind of boring. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki splitting time. I guess we'll always have Ramondre Stevenson. Bloom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. New England offense is confounding. My grandmother would say corn-fusing. But against the Jets, what can they even possibly do against that defense that's going to be pretty ferocious at home?
Yeah, Jets defense basically shut down the Bills in week 1. We're not able to shut down Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb in week 2. Can Mac Jones and Bill O'Brien find ways to make this work? I'm skeptical. Certainly not looking to get anybody from this passing game in except for Hunter Henry. Kendrick Bourne looked like he could be the lead receiver for this pass offense. Then Devontae Parker comes back and everything is uninspiring. Like you said, the one thing we have is Ramondre Stevenson. Here's some rational coaching. Ezekiel Elliott touched the ball less in week 1 than in week 2 than he did in week 1, and Ramondre Stevenson gets the rushing touchdown. So even though that's one of the things that Zeke is known for, Stevenson's just better, a lot better at this point. I think the Patriots can see that, and I think this is going to be. It's always fascinating when these two teams get together. You know, this is quite a rivalry. Remember, it was actually the Jets, the Rex Ryan Jets, that helped the Steelers get to the Super Bowl. Right, by taking out New England so the Steelers didn't have to. So there's a lot of history between these two teams. You often see the best of the Jets against the Patriots. But when we've seen Zach Wilson against the Patriots, well, I mean, statistically in one of the games, it was kind of the best of Zach Wilson. But otherwise, yeah, Bill Belichick knows how to torment a quarterback like him.
Yeah, so then what does that mean? I mean, you have your Garrett Wilson shares. You're just not feeling good with your Jets. You shouldn't be anyway. But now this week, especially against Belichick, I don't care if you're at home. This has the makings of like a 5-3 game.
Right. -3
The
to
baseball
-2.
score. Right, exactly. So I'm not saying avoid all your Jets, but
Yeah, except for Garrett Wilson. I mean, that's the thing. You saw it last week, Garrett Wilson. It just takes one. It just takes one play, and Garrett Wilson can be just fine. Okay. And that was against a very tough Dallas defense. New England's defense is going to be tough, but are they really as tough as Dallas? You did see in 2 games Zach Wilson played against Bill Belichick last year, right? One game was like over 300 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, the big plays that week were Wilson. Tyler Conklin actually had 2 touchdowns in a big game against the Patriots. In the other game, Wilson threw for 77 yards. So it could be what door number 1, door number 2. And of course, the backfield probably still keeping Breece Hall on a pitch count, probably still mixing in Dalvin Cook, even though Hall has, did I say Hill or Hall? Hall has a lot more to offer, but not for fantasy, not with Zach Wilson. And yeah, I mean, I think this is a game, Cease, that you want to win this game to make the vultures go somewhere else, right? Like the vultures are circling both of these teams, and maybe after this game, at least the vultures for one team will start circling the other.
That's right. It is the final game we're going to preview here in part 1 of the week 3 preview here on the Audible. I'm not even sure if I brought that up at the beginning of the show. More coffee, Buffalo and Washington. Yeah, more caffeine for the offense, which just means more James Cook. Like, it doesn't take teams long, especially if they struggle or get defeated in week 1 by Zach Wilson. But like, yeah, hey, that James Cook guy is pretty good. Let's give him the
Yeah.
ball a bunch. It opens up for
Yeah.
everybody. Even Gabe
Right.
Davis wasn't disappointing last week, and he's mostly
Right.
disappointing. Like,
Right.
okay, so I'm not saying rinse repeat, but I would like it to be a rinse repeat for the Bills in terms of the usage for one James flipping Cook.
Yeah, and you hope that he maybe gets some goal line carries. But with the opportunity to score a lot of points on Washington, certainly Damian Harris and Latavius Murray are what the heck flexes if you're in a pinch. And you expect a good game for Stephon Diggs and a good game for Gabe Davis. You saw the vulnerability for this Washington pass defense on the deep ball, and you would expect there to be some shots to Davis. You do have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. The tight end position for the Bills will continue to be productive for fantasy football. But if it's split between 2 players, especially if Knox is getting those goal line opportunities, that's not going to be good as far as giving us clarity. Washington's defense, how do you do the math on this, right? Washington's defense was easy for Denver to solve, at least for a half. But that same Denver offense couldn't solve the Raiders, who the Bills solved. So it makes my head hurt, but I think chances are the Bills are going to have a very good game, even with Chase Young starting to come on.
The answer is Kevin Bacon. Anyway, the answer is Sam Howell. And listen, and I've said this locally, I won't belabor it because it's a Broncos show. Oh, God. Can I just talk about Deion some more? Anyway,
Yes.
I did yell. I
Prime
yelled a
time.
lot.
Prime time.
Tyler Palumbus texted me last night, who's now on a competitor, and he said, like, stop yelling psycho. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe I went overboard because I was yelling about Rex Ryan, thinking he'd do anything as the Broncos DC. I was like, Rex, you're too lazy, man. Come on. And then I yelled at Jason Whitlock because he called Dion like a fraud and that it was like Duke. See you so
Let's just
unlikable.
I don't know if that name's come up on the show, and I hope it doesn't come up again.
Yeah. I didn't have much good to say, and I can't really get personal like I could on this stream unless Joe's like, hey, buddy, can you stop making fun of everybody's weight, buddy? Like, so I wasn't able to rant as much as I wanted to. Why was I talking about Washington? Oh yeah, because Washington's good. They're 9-4-1 in their last. Don't make me do the math on those games. Like, Washington's good. Like, and it was even with Taylor Heineke. Like, they could put up a fight. Now with more Eric Bieniemy, and now with Sam Howell. Now it's Buffalo, right? So you're gonna have to put up some points, but they can. You know, they've proved that. They've got the weapons. Terry McLaurin's looking healthier. Jahan Dotson not as good as we thought, and I certainly thought last week. This week he may have to be, but you also have Curtis Samuel. I don't know where Logan Thomas is at because of the concussion, because Kareem Jackson is playing in the 80s. Like, but you do, and you see Brian Robinson. Give him full credit. You know, I thought he was more of a plotter coming out. Like, okay, he's the banger. You know what you get with Robinson. He's still kind of that, right? They don't use Antonio Gibson as much, but like, just we need to praise Robinson more for what he can do. Maybe what he can do is somewhat limited compared to McCaffrey or Jahmyr Gibbs or whatever. Like, no, but like what Robinson does for this team, it's like the elixir. It sets everything right for Eric Bieniemy's squad.
Yeah, it's definitely a regulating force. And he's the one clear fantasy play in this offense. And maybe Terry McLaurin, who looks like the toe issue isn't actually affecting him that much. And he makes it tougher than to trust Jahan Dotson, to trust Curtis Samuel, who in any given week could blow up. If this turns into a shootout, if Washington's offense is up to the task, and is the Bills defense good? I don't know. Week one, they knocked out Aaron Rodgers, knocked himself out. And then you saw that a play or two by Zach Wilson. Last week, they completely put the clamps on Jimmy Garoppolo. Raiders traveling east, a lot of times it's a dud. So this will be an interesting test for Sam Howell and for Buffalo. Howell, a spot start. Someone said, I'm starting Sam Howell over Joe Burrow, assuming Burrow's even going to play. That's not necessarily crazy. Brian Robinson has to be in. Antonio Gibson is a little bit of a riddle because they continue to put him out there about half the time. You even saw in that catch and run reception, he's got the juice. He still has that Antonio Gibson juice, but they're not trying to leverage it like we hoped. Eric Bieniemy saying, no, Brian Robinson, that's what we need, that no nonsense downhill physical running, and they're winning. By the way, Washington's 2-0, not just 9-4-1 over the last 14, if my math is right, Cecil. 2-0 in the last 2. I know my math is right in that one. Like you said, Thomas with the concussion, not necessarily looking for a fantasy play here, but Cole Turner, man, he's tough to bring down. He looks like Donald Parham sized out there. And John Bates, who's making some plays. Sam Howell, that pass to John Bates last week, unconscious, that accuracy. So, yeah, this is a fun Washington team. And Cease, again, what makes it most fun? Let's celebrate this. Here's a name we're going to say, because we're going to say it's so good that we don't have Dan Snyder in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that one alone, Bloom. That's for another show. And I love what El Wood says. Bieniemy is the truth. Like EB, who is a friend, he's got to get flipping job. What's the matter with you, NFL? I know what's the matter with you.
Yeah, we know.
But we know. But can you please not be like you've been since your inception as a league? Anyway, now the chat room, since I brought up Rex Ryan, is talking about dirty hippie feet.
Yeah. That's,
I mean, you got oil for your hair, right?
When I learned that, go ahead.
No, but what about your feet? How do you take care of your feet, Bloom?
I don't. I actually have terrible feet. I think if I showed my feet on the show, it might scare people. Honestly, there's stuff on my feet. Like, is that a callus? Is that a plantar's wart? Is that a bunion? Is it all three? There's my feet. So, see, you really open up a can of worms here, but more like a can of like fungus and parasites. This reminds me, this is good bonus stuff. So back in the day, some of you may not know that I was actually in a rock and roll band. Well, more like we called ourselves Savant Garde. Crack was a Savant Garde.
Crack was like Mr. Bungle. They're awesome.
Yeah, it was a Savant Garde band. And I wrote one of the songs for Crack, and it was called Crabs and Lice. And it was about how I've got crabs and lice, but crabs and lice have me, like our bodies are like a little universe, a biome. And yeah, my feet,
they are.
They're definite. There's like community. There's a little world in between my toes and things. I should probably do something about that eventually.
Some tough acting to acting. Here I thought we were going to talk about having a fetish show. See, this is where my mind goes.
No, see, that's
we got another podcast because
this is not a foot fetish show. This is the show that's going to extinguish your foot fetish.
Exactly. You're like, Rex, what's the cure for Rex Ryan? Listening to the biomes in between your toes. Yeah. I was like, is this another offshoot of the Sex God pod? Like, nope. I don't even. We don't even. I
have to say sorry, Joe, for my feet, but no. People are asking, and maybe I should do it. The OnlyFans account for my feet.
Dude, times are tough. I'll OnlyFans it up. Are you kidding me? I'll take my shirt off right now. Maybe if we did
Right.
super chats. Joe, can I do super chats so that I can take my shirt off and people can give me money?
Yeah.
I feel like
I think we
Charlie's
crossed over to
mom-
Sorry Joe Plus without even like
I
the
think we
road. The
did.
sign just went on the road. Like you're now entering Sorry Joe Plus, but we didn't
Yeah,
even
you're like,
see it. See,
hey, what's it? It's not on my GPS, but like, I think it's Charlie's mom and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. When she's reading the thing that he wrote, it's like, money, give me, please. Like, yeah, I get it, man. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. So don't ever ask me about my feet again, or we're gonna end up even worse places.
Okay.
Don't get me started on my armpit either.
Yeah, it's interesting times. We'll say that. All right, we're done. We got What the Heck Flex tomorrow. We've got our ever popular What the Heck Flex tomorrow and all that. We appreciate you all. Thanks for being silly with us. We love you all. Make sure to help us out. Grow the YouTube channel, everybody. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And make sure to subscribe to footballguys.com. Free daily newsletter. You love the show, support the show. We don't have OnlyFans yet. So make sure to help us out by subscribing and all those sorts of things. So thank you. We appreciate you and love you much. Go forth and be awesome. And that's it. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We are the Audible, everyone. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?